What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from SBMTG here to finish up our series of Shadows over Innistrad top 10s by doing the top 10 rares and mythics in Shadows over Innistrad standard. Although I kind of thought that there were way more than just 10 good standard cards, so we're going to do the top 15 standard cards plus honorable mentions and a bunch of other stuff I want to talk about if I feel like talking about it, because that's how things work around here.
I'm the boss.
So let's go ahead and kick it off. First thing I'm going to do is establish some rules for this list, some groundwork. I'm going to lay it down so that you know where I'm coming from. That's important. First and foremost, I think the most important thing to remember is that this is basically metadata. This is a gathering of all, tournament top 8 data since Pro Tour Shadows over Innistrad, just like the top 10 decks list. And these are all the cards that show up the most often in tournament results. That's important to remember. So, really fun cards that everybody likes might not show up on the list. It's all about sort of tournament impact and how important they are in the overall meta right now in Standard. And the other thing to remember is that I didn't include sideboard-only cards, and I'm counting things like Hallowed Moonlight, which will occasionally show up as a 1 or 2 of in some main decks, but are for the most part relegated to sideboards. And the last thing that I'm going to put here is that I didn't include removal, because I wanted some more sort of impactful big-name cards to shine here on the list, and I didn't want to take up multiple spots with things like Languish, Declaration, Anguished Unmaking, and even Ruinous Path, which is an important piece of removal right now. So just know that it's sort of an honorable mention, although removal in the format, especially Languish and Declaration, I think that those are very, very important pieces right now. But I wanted sort of just more meaty and substantive cards to end up on the list here. So that's all the rules, and we're going to go ahead and do it. Honorable mention, OJUTAI. God. Dragon Lord OJUTAI is the only Dragon Lord to make this list. And Atarka is really good, of course. And, Dromoka's fine, too. But OJUTAI is the one that most people are scared of. And he's the reason that it sucks we don't have Crackling Doom anymore. And things like, sacrifice effects are still kind of important in the Standard, because OJUTAI is a threat in decks like Esper, and you still see the odd white-blue humans deck with like Always Watching pop up. So OJUTAI, just 5 mana, 5/4 flyer, can get you card advantage, has hexproof most of the time. So his whole decks are built around him. He's a good control finisher. So I mean, there's really nothing bad about Dragon Lord OJUTAI, which just shows you how good the format is right now, to be honest with you. But he just hasn't been in as many decks as you might think he should be in the last couple of months, so he doesn't quite make the list, but I do think he deserves a mention. Number 15, ULAMOG. Well, ULAMOG has definitely cemented his place as the big, stupid, dumb, fat ramp creature in the format right now. He's played in the green-red ramp deck everybody knows. He's played in blue-red ramp, that's a thing, blue-green ramp, mono-blue ramp, even mono-green ramp. Sometimes he's even seen play in decks that aren't ramp. The word ramp isn't on the end of the deck. Sometimes you see him in like as a 1-of in white-black control lists that go really long, and then sometimes he's a 1 or even a 2-of in seasons past decks that I've seen. So the guy is kind of everywhere as just a creature you really don't want to be on the other side of. Just ULAMOG, the most imposing creature in Standard, kind of by a lot, so he deserves a spot on the list. Number 14, soaring above the clouds. Never thought I could be so free. Well, SORIN is basically what every black-white control deck is trying to get to at the top of its curve right now. And he obviously sees play in Esper control as well, and sometimes Esper Dragons too. Just a fantastic 6-drop for control decks. He'll get you card advantage while hurting the opponent, and you can just win off of his +1. He's good removal that also gets you back in the game with some life gain. Subjectively my favorite Planeswalker, I would say, in this whole format. He always feels good when he comes down, and he's got a multitude of things he can do that can really mess people up. SORIN is just another awesome 6-mana Planeswalker. We'll see a couple of those on the list here. And, SORIN's awesome. You play him, and they're going to be sore in the morning. God, that's terrible. That was terrible. Number 13, DROMOKA'S Command. A lot of people might be like, oh yeah, DROMOKA'S Command is a card that exists, but if you follow Standard Magic, this is still an incredibly important card. It's really one of the key cards in Bant Company. You hardly ever see a Bant Company list without this card, and if you do see a list without this card, they're doing it wrong, to be honest with you. Just still incredibly versatile. It can function as removal, it can make your guys bigger, it can even effectively counter things like Fall of the Titans at instant speed, so lots and lots of awesome stuff about DROMOKA'S Command. It's still a card, and you should still play it. because it's good with your hangerback walkers. It makes your creatures bigger. It functions at removal at the same time at instant speed, and it's only the 2 mana. So just all the versatility. Oh, it can also make them sacrifice enchantments. Did I mention that? Which is still important too. So just Dromoka's Command is good, and you should play it because utility is good. Number 12, Hangarback Walker, Texas Ranger. Well, Hangarback has sort of seen a renaissance as of late. He's in all the green-white tokens decks, and that is almost certainly the best deck in the format right now, or at least the most feared. And he's in other stuff, he pops up occasionally in all kinds of things. Mostly, though, he's going to be in the green-white tokens deck, and sometimes he'll be in Aristocrats, things like that. But still, a force to be reckoned with, and one of the creatures you really don't want to kill, and one of the reasons that Declaration in Stone is a really good card right now. So Hangarback Walker, I think, definitely still deserves a spot on the list, and Standard will probably change a little bit when this guy rotates in a few months. Number 11, CHANDRA, Firebender. Flamecaller. Well, CHANDRA is the other 6-mana planeswalker that's been tearing up Standard the last few months. You see her in lots of stuff, too. You see her in Temur Walkers. You'll see her in the Grixis deck. That's actually important right now. And a bunch of other stuff. She's in Green-Red Ramp a lot of the time. So she pops up in a lot of admittedly fairly fringe decks, although that Grixis deck is really showing up a lot, as is the Naya deck. So hard to call CHANDRA fringe. Once you do have her out, she does a lot of stuff from, wiping the board to drawing you a bunch of cards to winning you the game. Basically, she can do that by herself, which is 6 damage a turn, haste. That's all of everything she does is freaking amazing. So, yes to CHANDRA, she's got to be on the list somewhere, but I'm not going to put her too high up. Although if I had made this list about a month ago, she'd probably be a little bit higher. She's fallen out of favor a little bit, but it's still seen in so many different things that she's got to be on here somewhere. Number 10, that ABBEY from the west side of the Vale. Well, a lot of people talked about this card being important, but none of us knew the half even. I mean, decks at this point are just trying to find ways to jam this into the mana base. Hey, we have more than 5 creatures in the whole deck. Or, we have 3 creatures in the entire deck, but this can make creatures, so we can play Westvale Abbey, right? Yeah, we totally play Westvale Abbey. I mean, the card is everywhere. If I listed all the decks it was in, it would kind of take a while. I mean, it's obviously in green-white tokens. It's in Aristocrats. It's in 4-color RITE. It's in a lot of stuff. You even see it in white-black control, mono-white humans, there's a lot of things that want to play a Westvale Abbey, and it helps you play ELDRAZI stuff, things you need colorless mana for. So, Westvale Abbey, man, just when he flips over, that is 9, lifelink damage flying that turn, and he's you can't get rid of him, so many good things about, Ormondal / Westvale Abbey. So, I love this card. I've loved it ever since it was first spoiled, and it's got a long time to go in this standard. It's still fairly young, and the card's going to be impactful, even without cards like Secure the Waste in the format. I can promise you that. So look out, because seriously, Westvale Abbey will remain prominent, I think, for its entire tenure in Standard, because the card is just absolutely bonkers, dumb, stupid. It's powerful. Card is powerful. Number 9, Jace Vryn's Prodigy. Now, this could be a polarizing entry on the list for sure, because some people will be like, well, Jace should be number 2 or 3 or top 5, and then some people will be like, dude, Jace is not even this important at all anymore. So I understand the differing viewpoints here. So I'm going to put Jace sort of right in the middle, but in the top 10 definitely. He still sees play in Bant Company a lot of the time. He sees play in the up-and-coming Grixis deck that's around right now, and he sees play in some other stuff too. Most decks that play blue will want to exploit Jace in one way or another, either to recast key spells, they want to loot, they want to draw cards, maybe some Madness decks want to discard cards. He fuels Delirium. He's just so good with everything that this format is trying to do right now that he definitely is going to be in the top 10 somewhere. His price still warrants it, even though he doesn't warrant that price. That's a weird paradox, but still, obviously, I don't even think, he obviously wasn't worth $90. I don't know if he's worth $45 either, but he is still an incredibly important card in the format that does get a lot of things done. Whether he's in human, creature form or in planeswalker form at the time. So, I do love Jace, and I think that the only reason people hate him is his price. He's been vilified because of that. But he definitely deserves some love for all the stuff he can do in the format. The problem is that, not everyone can afford to do those things. So, shame on you, Jace. It's not your fault. Don't be mad at Jace. It's not Jace's fault. Number 8, NISSA, Voice of Zendikar. NISSA obviously is mostly played in the green-white tokens deck, but like I've already said, I think that's probably the best deck in the entire format right now. So her being one of the 2 key planeswalkers in that deck will give her a very high spot on this list. But she also sees play in the Naya planeswalkers deck, so take that for what it's worth. And she'll show up in other, predominantly green decks occasionally. I've seen 1 or 2 copies of her in seasons past. That looked interesting to me. But NISSA is going to be able to keep you going through the game, providing chump blockers and making all of your creatures bigger sometimes, and her ultimate is especially crazy. A lot of people don't even talk about her ultimate, but her ultimate is actually obviously not a finisher, but something that's going to it's going to put you in an amazing position every time. So absolutely love this planeswalker, and I feel like it should actually be seeing more play than just a couple of decks it sees play in, but those decks it is obviously very, very effective in. Number 7, Displacer. I hardly know her. Eldrazi Displacer occupies a pretty neat place in this standard right now. Not only is his probably best function being, the key piece in an infinite combo loop right now with, Brood Monitor and Zulaport Cutthroat. A lot of people know about that, and that's a pretty awesome combo when you can get it to go off. But it's also good with, anything that has good enter the battlefield triggers, which turns out is kind of a lot of things in this format. This will displace Thought-Knot Seer, it'll displace AVACYN, it'll sometimes displace Linvala, it can displace Goblin Dark Dwellers. There's a huge list of incredible targets for this thing to displace right now. It can also save your guys from removal. It can blink their creatures out of combat, effectively removing them from combat. Eldrazi Displacer, I can definitely see him getting even better in years to come when they accidentally, or even on purpose, release a creature with a crazy ETB trigger that can be exploited very, very easily with this. So, but even in the context of the standard meta that we're talking about right now, he's got a lot of amazing targets. Number 6, KALITAS. So Kalitas, excuse me. You gotta pronounce it right. In a way, it's actually amazing that Kalitas is this, high up the list. He's number 6. He should be in the top 3, right? I actually think that there's better cards than Kalitas, which is crazy because Kalitas is obviously one of the best creatures in Standard right now. Not only because he's just obviously good as far as, raw power, 4 mana, 3/4 lifelinker that gets way bigger as the game goes on is amazing, and he makes zombies, he exiles their creatures, just so much value and so many different things happening on this card that he's obviously very, very good and efficient. But, he's good especially in this meta because he's amazing against the Green-Black Aristocrats deck and basically anything that's trying to exploit its graveyard, creatures in its graveyard, period. So Kalitas is great against those. He blanks boards against mono-white humans and Bant Company by being a 3-power lifelinker. That can sometimes negate a ton of damage that they can swing in with. So and he's exploitable. As far as sacrifice, you can sacrifice things to him and exploit things like Zulaport Cutthroat. So just all the stuff this guy does, and he's a great turn 4 play, and you follow up on turn 5 with the Goblin Dark Dwellers. Both Red-Black Control and Grixis are doing that to great effect right now, and just Kalitas pops up everywhere, and there's definitely a reason for that. He's just a boss creature that can be taken out by things like Grasp before he gets bigger, Ultimate Price, Declaration in Stone, Ruinous Path, lots of things kill the guy, and he's still insanely good, which tells you something. Number 5, CRYPTOLITH RITE. A lot of people said that this card was the real deal when it was first revealed, and that rhymed. And a lot of us were like, that's just a CRYPTOLITH right-wing conspiracy, lol. But it turns out the card had the right stuff. That's probably the end of the right puns, I would say. But in any case, CRYPTOLITH RITE it obviously really is the real deal, and all those conspiracy nuts were absolutely correct. Green-Black Aristocrats plays the card, 4-color Rite, obviously plays the card. It's right there in the name. And there's, lots of different CRYPTOLITH Rite variants out there. There's green-red Rite. There's green-white Rite with Secure the Waste. That's actually a really good deck with Westvale Abbey. That's a fine deck. And there's lots of stuff that you can do with CRYPTOLITH Rite. It obviously develops, or sometimes develops, a very good board by just turn 3, depending on turn 1 and 2 plays. It can really start going off very early in the game and be hard to deal with. So, and it forces some decks to play main deck Radiant Flames and Kozilek's Returns and 3 mana removal, but mass removal, because sometimes in the face of the kind of board presence this can garner, something like Languish is just kind of too slow. So you need 3 mana mass removal to be able to deal with the board state that something like this can help you establish. And CRYPTOLITH RITE is sort of one of the key pieces in two very important decks right now, so it's gonna be in the top 5, guaranteed. Number 4, Archangel AVACYN. Wait, I just realized Sin is right there in her name, so it's like, is it like AVACYN? Mind blown. Well, it seems like every deck that plays white in this format has at least tried this card out at some point or another. It is stuck in green-white tokens and Bank Company. It's in those decks kind of all the time. But even decks like Esper Control have tried it out. Mono-white humans, blue-white humans, green-white humans, all the humans variants have tried it. Black-white Control, you'll sometimes see copies of it. I mean, it's in almost any deck that can create white mana in the format, or at least has been tried out at some point or another. And in some decks, you want it to flip, in some decks you don't. In some decks it's just a control finish because it's a 5-mana 4/4 flyer that you can play during their combat step or at the end of their turn. And if they do happen to flip it, you just wipe their board, or a lot of their board, especially against some of the more prominent decks, tokens, aristocrats, Bant Company. This just flipping her can wipe the entire board. So AVACYN, multifaceted, many different uses for this card, whether you're using it to back up your aggro guys or you're using it as sort of a control finish. So lots of things this card can do, and I'm pretty sure everyone realized that the card was going to be amazing when it was first printed, but I don't know that we knew it was going to see all of this play. I mean, white and green are two of the better colors in the entire format, and as far as white goes, this card is one of the major reasons. Number 3, and the best creature in Standard, Sylvan Advocate. Remember how I said that AVACYN was at least tried out in pretty much any deck that can create white mana? Well, Sylvan Advocate's a lot like that with green mana, except he's stuck in nearly every deck that he's been tried out in. From Naya to, Seasons Past, he's in that as well. He's in green-white tokens, he's in Bant Company, he's in green-white humans, he's in, even though he's not a human, he's just in every single thing, from here to eternity in this Standard. If you can create green mana, you are playing him, and he's stuck. This was not an experiment in any deck, or at least it was maybe an experiment when people started slotting him into literally anything that can create green. He's like the standard Tarmogoyf, but he's no longer an experiment. He's a successful experiment. The card is in nearly every darn deck, and he shows up in like green-red ramp sometimes too. I mean, there's certain decks the guy is just very obvious in, and some decks he's not. But it turns out that, a 2-mana 2/3 Vigilance is pretty good, and not only will he get better later in the game, but all your man lands will too. Things like Hissing Quagmire will be a 4/4 Death Touch. That's awesome. Your red-white land in the Teamer deck, or in the Teamer deck, in the Naya deck will be a 4-power double striker. So it's just, Lumbering Falls is a 5/5 hexproof now. Shambling Vent is a 4-power lifelink. There's just so many awesome things. And Abzan isn't really played that often, but Shambling Vent plus Sylvan Advocate is incredible. So Sylvan Advocate, really, I'll say it again, the standard Tarmogoyf, which makes him definitely a top 3 card, and for my money, the most played and best creature in Standard. Number 2, and the best Planeswalker in Standard, Gideon Graves. I would probably call him Gideon Graves even if Scott Pilgrim didn't exist, because he digs them for you and puts you in them. This analogy went downhill. But anyway, Gideon, seriously, is it weird to see him all the way up the list like this? Well, it shouldn't be, because he's under the radar as one of the best cards in Standard to this day. A lot of people may have assumed that Gideon's dropped off, but if you really look at tournament results, this guy is in damn near every single deck that you see out there. Sometimes he'll even show up in Bank Company. That's how good he is. It's not very often, but it is occasional. This guy's in a curve topper in decks like mono-white humans a lot of the times. He's in sometimes blue-white humans as well. But he mostly is going to shine, obviously, in green-white tokens, but he's also one of the main finishers in black-white control, which is another one of the best decks in the format. He's going to show up in pretty much every Esper deck that you encounter, and he's going to finish the game a lot of the time for every single one of these decks. He's like a better Nissa. Nissa can create tokens, Nissa can make him bigger, but he does all this stuff better. He creates creatures for no loyalty. He can, he can create an emblem the turn he comes out. So he's just incredibly powerful Planeswalker that still sees more play, I think, than people realize that he does. He went through like a 2-month period where he sort of dropped off the radar, and then green-white tokens became a thing, and people remembered how good he was. Now he shows up in the Naya Planeswalkers deck very consistently, because the guy is just, he does everything. Very importantly, he doesn't cost any loyalty to create a creature. Already said that, but that's so important, I'll say it again. And he himself is is a huge guy when you want him to be. So, I mean, I could talk about Gideon literally all night. I just think that he's easily the best planeswalker in their format, and something that is oddly under the radar because everyone recognizes how amazing the card is. I mean, I've put him on, number one on a list of top 10 cards in Standard in one of the last couple of Standards here. And he slipped a little bit, but he's still incredibly, incredibly important. And the number one card in Standard right now, Disciple of the Ring. I'm just kidding. I am just kidding. It is not Disciple of the Ring. Although, to look at this comment section sometimes, and other YouTubers' comment sections, you'd think that Disciple of the Ring is a lot of people's number one. But anyway, it's not. That was a joke. The number one card in Standard is Collected Company. Well, who didn't see this coming, right? I mean, this is the card that a lot of the most powerful decks in the format are based around right this second. I mean, Green-Black Aristocrats, obviously Bant Company, and there's, Jund Company, there's AVACYN Company right now in the format. There's a lot of different company decks, just Green-White Company too. And sometimes you'll see even Green-White tokens will pack some copies of Collected Company. It's not often, again, but it'll shoehorn them in because the card is just that amazingly good, whether it's during your opponent's end step or their combat phase, or their combat step, just so many different things they'll have to worry about if you fire off a Collected Company. So many problem creatures for 3 mana or less in the format right now, and Reflector Mage, Sylvan Advocate we just talked about. There's so many good things that they'll have to worry about. So Collected Company is sort of the backbone of Standard deck building philosophy at the moment, for better or worse. And the card's going to rotate in October, and I think this one, a lot of us will be happy to see go. I know I will. I think Standard will completely morph when we lose this card, and Lord knows what's going to happen, but I can't wait to see what it is that happens when this card leaves Standard. But as it is, it's so important that it's, Standard has really morphed around it for the last few months of its inclusion in this format. So that's our list. Let me know how you felt about this one in the comments section below, if we missed anything, or maybe, if we should reorder the list for whatever reason. I tried to be as objective as possible, as usual, but I know that there's still, that being said, some controversial slots in the list. So let us know how you felt, and if you enjoyed the content, feel free to like it and share it. That helps a lot. And then sub to the channel if you want to see deck techs, more top 10 lists, and Eldritch Moon spoilers coming up. We're Strictly Better MTG, and I'm Dev, as always. Thanks for watching, my wizards.